Food and nutrition is complicated. We are all unique. Genetics and lifestyle play such a big role that in general, making highly specific claims saying this is unhealthy, this is a superfood, is difficult. And yet, social media is filled with those claims. And I get hundreds of comments and messages daily asking me to fact check or debunk these claims. And as someone who has spent a fair amount of time on social media, doing everything from blogging to Tumblr to Twitter to parody music to food science, one of the ways I take care of my mental health is to not engage with individuals but focus on engaging with ideas. So I've never been a fan of making reaction videos because they tend to be about the drama of arguing with an individual. But at the same time, it is not possible for me to practically respond to every comment and every message that I get asking me to fact check a specific viral video, short or reel. So what I've decided to do is to make a different kind of reaction video where I will focus on teaching moments rather than purely criticizing an individual. I realize in all humility that I will have my own biases. We all do. And that will result in cherry picking things that I can use science to prove wrong while skipping over the big picture. So to avoid that, I will consciously make an effort to tell you what I agree with before proceeding to fact check and explain what I disagree with. Food is complicated. There are no single 100% correct answers. The very first creator I want to address is Satvic Movement. I get their videos in my private messages more often than others. So let's begin with where I agree with Satvic Movement. I think their motivation to help people eat and live healthy lives is commendable. Their videos encourage moderation, the consumption of whole foods, avoidance of ultra-processed foods, and they regularly amplify and share sustainable practices in the kitchen, and they share practical suggestions on improving mental health. Where I disagree are some specifics. Let's get into them.
How to identify real food from fake food. Rule number 1, eat food that eventually rots.
Now, I get that the message is to eat fresh, unprocessed food, which will eventually rot, but we have 8 billion people on the planet. Most of the planet's calories come from rice and wheat, two things that do not rot because we process them that way. You can't actually eat whole grains of rice or dal. It has to be dehusked and polished so that we have a product that lasts months and years. Likewise, maida has a much longer shelf life than atta. Of course, it's better to consume more atta than maida. But remember, we cannot store atta for that long. Meat, vegetables, and fruits spoil in a very short amount of time, which is also why they are, for each calorie, more expensive than staple foods like grains, which do not rot.
Because only food that has life can rot. If you place an apple on a counter, what will happen in a few days? It will rot, it will decay, it will turn black.
That is not how this works. A grain of rice is technically alive. A tomato is technically alive. But a chicken breast is not alive because cells in animals die when the animal is killed. Plants, on the other hand, die when you cook them. And cooked food is dead, not alive. And it will rot at Indian room temperature. With the exception of eating probiotic foods like dahi, all cooked food you eat is dead. If it was alive, we'd have a problem. So this simplistic idea that foods that have life will rot is not a useful way of thinking about food.
But some anecdotal evidence has suggested that burgers, even if you keep them on the counter for a week, nothing much changes. Why? Because only real food attracts microorganisms.
A burger is made of bread, a burger patty, which again, when industrially produced, will include preservatives because when you sell to billions of people every day, you cannot risk fungal poisoning. Of course, we can argue that it is unhealthy to eat fast food, but that misses the point. In many parts of the world, fast food exists to feed the working class that do not have the time to cook fresh food at home every day. So while a diet that is only burger and fries is unhealthy, criticizing it for not spoiling too soon is silly. If it spoiled really soon, there'd be lawsuits. We can extend this to frozen or ready-made chapatis, which also do not spoil very easily. Many people do not have the time to make fresh chapatis every day. Those that do are either rich or men forcing their wives and mothers to cook every day.
Food that comes straight from the farm to your kitchen is real food.
This is just privilege speaking. The vast majority of people on the planet cannot afford farm to table. It's a luxurious privilege. To be fair, it was not a luxury 200 years ago when most Indians lived in villages very close to where food is grown. We live in cities now and in industrial societies where most people are not engaged in agriculture. There is no doubt that this has, on average, reduced the quality of food that is available to most people. But at the same time, we now produce enough food to feed 1.4 billion people in India without starvation, something that was remarkably common in the past. An industrial society and cities is why we have vaccines, chemotherapy, insulin, internet, smartphones, and YouTube. Demonizing the food system that ensures that everyone gets fed in favor of some impractically artisanal luxury idea of farm to table is silly.
Food that goes to a factory in between where it is heavily processed, it is no longer food. Then it has become what? A product.
Rice, atta, milk, eggs, frozen vegetables, every one of these comes from a factory. We're not sitting and hand-pounding rice in a village home to feed billions of people. Without industrialization of agriculture, we would all starve. So I think it's irresponsible to paint factories as some kind of villain in the food system. These factories literally feed us.
You eat a potato, it's what? Food, real food. But that potato goes to a factory, heavily processed, turned into a potato chip. Now it's become a product for someone to make money. And the third golden rule, don't eat food that has TV commercials. Have you ever seen ad for broccoli? What about papaya? No. Why? Because no industry profits by feeding you real food. And every industry in the world profits by feeding you fake packaged processed food that ultimately, bit by bit, destroys your body.
Farmers don't work for free. Everyone needs to make money. If anything, India would be better off if the people growing our food made more money. To be clear, eat more potatoes and fewer chips. But chips are also a way to preserve the potato for a much longer time because chips have very little water and salt. This attitude of idolizing some utopian idea of the selfless farmer growing fresh food and delivering it to you at super low cost without using pesticides or fertilizers is in reality toxic. No country has ever grown without commercial enterprise. And rice and atta are advertised. As for broccoli not being advertised, in the West, farmers' markets are advertised. And that's a good thing because you want people to eat more vegetables and you want farmers to make more money.
एड में क्या दिखाया? और बाकी काजू. इस पूरे पैकेट में सिर्फ एक काजू है.
सोडियम नाइट्रेट, बेंजोएट, फॉर्मेल्डिहाइड ये केमिस्ट्री लैब में मिलते हैं मगर इन सब प्रोडक्ट्स में भी डाले जाते हैं और क्या होता है व्हेन वी ईट दीस प्रोडक्ट्स वी गेट हेल्थ प्रॉब्लम्स.
फेक पैकेट, फेक एड, मतलब पैकेट के ऊपर कुछ और लिखते हैं, पीछे कुछ और होता है.
I actually agree with the fact that misleading marketing claims must be regulated. No argument there at all. And the fact that a lot of packaged foods in India tend to have more sugar and fats is also true. That said, have you wondered why? What is the logic in companies wanting to kill their own customers? They are mostly reacting to market demand. Indians on average like their packaged foods to be sweeter than average. Any single company deciding to put less sugar will find their sales drop to the competitor that adds more sugar. The only way this will work is if we have regulations that state that products that use more than a certain percentage of sugar must put a warning or something like that. Let's now get to the cashew nut. India is a price-sensitive, mostly poor country. Mass-produced packaged goods have to be affordable. And you don't become affordable by putting 50 cashew nuts in your biscuits. Remember, it's still a biscuit, not a kaju katli. You can absolutely go buy more expensive biscuits that have more cashews. What is the point of going after someone who's making a cheaper and affordable product? You don't have to buy it.
यदि आप एल्यूमिनियम यूज करते हैं तो उसको अभी इसी वक्त अपने घर से निकाल दीजिए.
We've been using aluminium vessels for more than a century now, and most of India still uses aluminium. And the Alzheimer's Association has clarified many times that there is no link between aluminium in cookware and Alzheimer's. You can watch my video that explains this in detail. But what I want to highlight here is again the tendency to speak confidently from a position of privilege. Most Indians cannot afford anything other than an aluminium vessel. And telling people that it is poison without any evidence is quite irresponsible. So, in summary, Satvic Movement is a page with a massive following. And I do believe their heart is in the right place. And due respect to them, they've never done things like blocking people that criticize them, something that many other creators do. But I do hope they consider rethinking some of their very fundamentalist ideas about food, particularly in India. The concept of Satvic food comes from a very specific region in North India and cannot be generalized to the entire country, which is so diverse in its eating habits. Fish, bone marrow, and garlic are insanely healthy things to eat and are not Satvic. They are tamasic. Companies are not the enemy. We must be vigilant about misleading marketing claims, but we cannot feed 1 billion people without processing food. Processed food is not the enemy. Even rice and wheat are processed. People don't always make the choice to eat unhealthy food only because of lack of awareness. But in many situations, it's what they can afford. Everyone cannot eat organic, farm to table, whole grain, pure veg or vegan food. And there is no evidence that you will be unhealthy if you cannot afford the expensive foods they recommend. You can be healthy regardless of what you eat. How much you eat and whether you get all macros and micros matters much more. You are not going to die because you occasionally ate a biscuit, instant noodles, or a burger. In fact, the vast majority of Indians that are diabetic do not eat instant noodles or burgers. Nutrition is complicated. There is no single Satvic way to good health.